We're looking at defeater beliefs. Defeater beliefs are those beliefs that stop people even considering Christianity. Most evangelism, in my view, takes place with people assuming that people will want to hear. But for most people, they are just not interested. We could do this. I've done this many times. Just walk into a bar or walk into a cafe, walk up to people on the street and say, "Are you at all interested in Christianity?" And just the complete blank look on their faces, or terror. Wow, what are you? And it's not, in most situations, it's not that people are really that hostile. They just don't know. They think it's completely irrelevant. And before you can tell them about Jesus, you've got to deal with some of the beliefs that they have, they wouldn't even recognize as beliefs, that stop them thinking even about Christianity. So what I'm going to do, because this is 20 minutes, and normally I would take an hour for each of these. This is obviously, it's very simple, but I want you to question and discuss afterwards. Big one, not a huge one in so many people. Science has disproved God. I knocked on a door once, and a man came to the door, and I said, "Hi, I'm from the local church." And he said, "I'll get the wife." And I said, No, look, me man, you man, me beard, we talk. And he just looked at me and he said, "I don't believe in God." I said, "Oh, what do you believe in?" "I believe in science." "Are you a scientist?" "No." "You study science?" "No." "You read any science?" "No." "Do you know anything about science?" "No, I just believe in it." Now, maybe most people are not that extreme, but it's still there. Who needs God when you've got science? Science gives you iPhones and toasters and kettles and cars. Religion gives you jihad and wars and homophobia and everything else. It's delusional. Science is fact. I can feel it in that way. And that's a huge defeater belief. Now, lots and lots of ways to deal with that. Number one, it's just very, very simple. You ask, what is science? Very simple. What do you mean by science? You then ask, what are the limitations of science? So, for example, I can put on a kettle. This is obviously very British. You put on a kettle and I put the electricity. Science can tell you how the electricity works, how the water heats up. Science cannot tell you why I put the kettle on to make a cup of tea for my granny. Can't tell you that. There are lots of things that science cannot tell you. Also, the limitations of science in terms of what happens, because science can split the atom, but science doesn't tell you if it's right or wrong to make a nuclear bomb out of it. So what does tell you what's right or wrong? Science has nothing to say about right or wrong. Science has nothing to say about love. Science doesn't prove everything. That's one thing. Also, we are not claiming that science proves God. What we are simply suggesting is that science points to God. Science and God are not opposites. And I think it's important that we deal with that we think about that. The way, by the way, to deal with this defeater belief is not to go straight in, feet flying like I often do. Why are you such an idiot? No. The way to go into it is just to probe with questions. Okay, let's explore this. What do you mean by this? What is science? Why do you trust in science? Is science a person or a thing? Are there scientists who believe in God? Oh yeah, but they're odd. Who says? But you, with all the defeater beliefs, and I'm trying with each of these, I'm not giving you comprehensive answers here, but with all the defeater beliefs, you are trying to get people to actually see them as beliefs. They just assume them. That man just assumed it. Evil and suffering disprove God. That's, I don't believe in God because of evil and suffering. I understand that in different ways. So, for example, I come past Auschwitz. I find it really, really hard. Really hard. I find it really hard driving around here. I studied the Holocaust for my history degree, and I've been to Auschwitz once. I'm not going again unless I have to, which for me would be to take my daughter. But I just hate it, absolutely hate it. And there's something wrong with you if you haven't at some point emotionally felt, wait a minute, how can this possibly be? Or make it more personal, directly to you. How can a friend of mine who's a missionary, going to be a missionary, fine young man, going to be a missionary in South America, on his way to the plane, crashes his car and ends up brain damaged? What kind of God would allow that? Or why do the good die young? There's so many different things. So the whole suffering question. Now, I spoke at the Keswick Convention in England on this, and it took me an hour and a half, so 2 minutes. Here's what I would simply say about it. We have to turn this one completely on its head, completely around. Because for me, evil and suffering is a pointer to God rather than a pointer away from God. What I find is this. I find that you get this question at two different levels. You get it at the question of the person who's making an accusation. So they're saying, if I was God, I'd make a better job. They're not really questioning. Or you get it at a personal question where someone's saying, why did my son die? I just don't understand that. And so you will be giving two different answers for that. But this is what I've noticed. I've noticed that the people who ask most of the suffering questions tend to be Western, middle-class, well-off people who maybe experience something bad and they've no means of coping with it. You go to countries where there's much more war and trouble and difficulty, or people are poorer, the suffering question, suffering's part of their life. They don't live in Disneyland. See, we've developed this fantasy world where nobody's supposed to get sick. Nothing bad's supposed to happen, and if it does happen, it's somebody's fault, and you've got to sue them. Well, that's not the reality of the real world. Bad stuff happens. For me, I feel very privileged just now. I feel very happy that my 3 children are healthy and doing well. They're believers. I nearly died 3 years ago, but I'm healthy and doing well, and I'm very happy in my ministry and so on. But this is not just dour Scottish Calvinism. I'm looking and we see one day of sunshine, we go, we'll pay for this. There'll be 3 days of rain. And that's not just being miserable. The fact is that we live in a valley of tears. We live in the valley of the shadow of death. And we can't escape that. So the reason I'm saying that suffering is a pointer to God is, what do we do about suffering? You take God out of the equation, suffering still exists. You take God out of the equation, evil still exists. Though theoretically it shouldn't for atheists. The Christian has to come and say, look, I know there's evil and suffering, and it's wrong. This is a distorted universe. But what has God done about it? And of course, then we come to the cross and so on. I put it in a very personal way. I was in a Highland congregation in the north of Scotland for 6 years. Young minister, 26 years old at the time. And I had 2 friends who were very anti-God, anti-church. They said, David, we hate the church, we hate what you teach, but we like you. So fair enough. How do you know what I teach? Because you never come to church. But never mind. They had an 18-month-old baby, a daughter, who died a cot death. And they asked me to take the funeral. And it's one of those things that you take with a coffin that's 18 inches, and you're going, oh my goodness. You never ever want to do those. It's horrendous. Wee white coffin. So I did that. Following Sunday, the mother's in church. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. Never comes to church, hates God. Her daughter dies. She's going to be even more angry against God. And when she came out the door, I said to her, because I'm not very subtle, and I just asked directly, I said, excuse me, what are you doing here? And she said, David, if there's no God, none of this makes any sense. See, suffering doesn't make any sense without God. I think with God, ultimately it does, even when we don't understand sometimes what that sense is. So rather than evil and suffering disprove God, actually evil and suffering are proofs of the Bible, because there's nothing that happens in this world that the Bible doesn't say is going to happen. We know that. Seriously, how do you explain the Holocaust without the Bible? Now, I read the Old Testament prophets. I read what Pharaoh did. I read what Herod did. And I go, humanity's stuffed. That's the huge big problem. You say, oh, no, humanity's basically good and we're progressing and so on. Yeah, right. Since the Second World War, there's been 100 wars. Genocide? Who knows where and when the next one will be. And if you've ever seen a crowd baying for blood, it wasn't just in the Roman Colosseum. Could easily happen in Europe again. Easily happen. So I think evil and suffering are rather pointers to God. Here's another big defeater belief. Religion causes evil. The Guardian newspaper in Britain in the year 2007 ran a poll which said that the majority of people, I can't remember the exact number, 60 or 70%, believed that religion was the primary cause of evil in the world. And that's partially true, of course. Religion is used by a lot of people to either express evil, and sometimes it may cause evil. I have a friend, for example, who works in the Netherlands, and her job is as a social worker amongst children who have been abused by their religious fathers or mothers in strict religious communities. Yeah, that happens. It does happen, and religion can do a huge amount of harm, and we wouldn't deny that. But religion causes evil. You see, what they do is they put all religious people in the same box. So in British television, for example, the portrayal of Christians is always of kind of very effeminate vicars or doddery old women who are always interfering, or more recently, fanatical young bright-eyed people who blow up buildings or attack people or are complete hypocrites. And that's the image that people have. And there is an image of a religious person that makes it very different. I mean, I don't wear a dog collar, mainly because I think they're for dogs. But I really don't. I don't wear it. I don't like clerical uniform. I just don't wear one. And but if I did, I would wear one on a train, because in Britain it would mean I would get a seat, no problem, and I'd be left all on my own. Nobody would sit beside me, except maybe some religious nutter who'd try and convert me to their distinctive view of the rapture or something. But oh no, religious person, stay away. I'll tell you one wee story about this. I play chess, and I went down to our local chess club, which is kind of, in my city, it's a working men's sport, believe it or not, because they can drink beer, swear, and play and say, yeah, I'm playing a game. So I love going down playing chess, but I didn't tell them for 6 months. Well, the two key questions you get asked are, what's your name? What'd you do? So my name's David. What'd you do? I can't tell you. If I tell you, I'm going to have to kill you. So I didn't do it. After about 6 months, this tells you more about my city than anything perhaps, they'd worked out that I was either an undercover police detective or a drug dealer. So when that came out, I said, look guys, I got to tell you something. I'm actually a minister. And the shock, one even went like that. And I said, no, that doesn't work with me. Wrong one. And I said, come on guys. And I mean, apart from making jokes about the bishop's move because they don't understand Presbyterianism or anything, and various other things, they were okay with it. But to say that, even, you're religious. We have students who come. I'll give you one more example. We had a student who came from Aberdeen, which is to the north of us, comes to our church. After 3 weeks, her parents come down to visit her. They're in the church, and I said to them as they're going out, nice to see you. Who are you? Oh, we're so-and-so's parents. I said, oh, you're here early. Most parents don't come down and see their children so quickly. And they said, yeah. I said, is there a problem? I said, yeah. Can I help? No. Why not? You're the problem. What have I done? We brought up our daughter to be normal. And, she came down to university. We thought maybe she'd take a few drugs, maybe she'd get a boyfriend, a little bit of drinking, partying. As long as she worked, enjoyed herself, got her degree, we were happy. We started getting letters home. Mom, Dad, love Dundee, great city. I've started going to this really great church. And I said, so you came to check us out? I said, yes. How did you find us? This was after the morning service. You were surprisingly normal. To which I said, that would have been fine if I'd left it there, but I can't help myself sometimes. And I said, You got us on a good day. It's next week we do the child sacrifice. And, and for a nanosecond, they looked at us. What? I said, come on, guys, what do you think goes on here? Extreme, but religion is a source of evil. Uh-oh, they've started going to church. It's a big problem. Let me do another one, a big one just now that we'll come back to, because I'm going to raise some of these and we can discuss them. Churches are against equality and diversity. Everywhere I go, supposing I'm speaking on the price of tea in China, I will still be asked, what do you think about homosexuality? And why are you against equality? And why are you such a homophobe? Well, you've got to learn to take that one head on, but my advice would generally be when you're asked that, you're not usually being asked. It is an accusation. It's like, when did you stop beating your wife? It's actually a very difficult question to answer very succinctly. So you don't go straight in with that one. Again, I'll give you an example. I was debating a politician about same-sex marriage down in London. And he turned to me in a room, 200 people, 100 LGBT people, and he said, what do you think about homosexuality, David? I said, that's not fair. I said, why not? I said, because I answer that question, we're talking at different levels. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, for you, let me guess, you were bullied at school because you're gay. He said, yes. I said, do you feel rejected by the church because you're gay? He said, yes. You would identify yourself as gay? He said, oh, absolutely. I said, see, for me, it's different. I don't identify myself as heterosexual. I identify myself as human. And then Christian in Christ. And then, to be honest, probably husband, father, Scottish, even before you get down to my heterosexuality. I mean, I never walk up to people and go, hi, I'm David, I'm heterosexual. But people do walk up to me and go, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm homosexual. To which I normally go, yeah, and I'm heterosexual, we'll never get it on. Now, what do you want? What's the point? Well, I said to him, look, this is what you've done. You've made your sexuality your identity. And here's the problem. I'm not going to argue about homosexuality with you. I'm going to say this. I believe that God made us as male and female. I believe that gender is important. I believe that sex is a gift that's sacred from God. I believe that it should be kept within the confines of marriage, and that marriage is between a man and a woman. I don't care if your sex is homosexual, if your sexual sin is homosexual or heterosexual. I just think it's wrong. I said, that's my view. That is the view that Western society has been based on for the past 2,000 years, or at least 1,500 years. You may want to choose all that out, but please don't you call me a bigot because I have a view with which you don't agree, because that is bigoted. And he kind of looked at me and he went, okay, I'll accept that. Fair enough. And we got on and we talked about it. I want to say Christians are for equality and diversity. And actually, without Christianity, you're not going to get it. But equality is code in most, certainly Western European countries now. It's code for what do you think about homosexuality. For me, equality is about social justice more than that. People will mention another defeated belief is other religions. How can you be so arrogant as to say that one religion is true and the others are not? To which my response is generally, how can you be so arrogant as to say that your religious view is true and nobody else's is? Oh, I'm not saying that. I said, you're saying precisely that. That's exactly what you're saying. You're saying all religions are the same, and yet the Muslims won't agree with you, and we don't agree with you, and the Hindus don't agree with you. Well, they'll probably agree with you, but they don't mean it because they haven't a clue what they're saying. But you don't really believe that, do you? You just think all religions are rubbish. My time is up. The church is full of hypocrites. In that case, don't join it, or rather do join it because you'd fit in very well.